There's a cat in my neighborhood that spends hours each afternoon doing something utterly fascinating. She spins in circles, chasing her own tail with an intensity that borders on desperation. Round and round she goes, faster and faster, until she collapses in exhaustion, never once catching what she pursues. I watch her sometimes from my window, and I see something uncomfortably familiar in those frantic circles. Because isn't that exactly what most of us are doing with our lives? We chase happiness like it's a tale just beyond our reach, spinning faster and faster, convinced that if we just try harder, grip tighter, push more forcefully, we'll finally catch what we're after. You've been taught something from the moment you could understand words. Life is a battle. Success requires struggle. Peace must be won through constant effort and vigilance. They told you to fight for what you want, to never give up, to push through obstacles with sheer determination. And so you learned to approach everything with clenched fists and gritted teeth. Your relationships became projects to manage. Your career became a mountain to conquer. Even your own happiness became something you had to wrestle into submission. But here's what they never told you. What nobody wants to admit because it sounds too simple, too paradoxical, too dangerous to a culture built on hustle and control. The very act of forcing is often the only thing standing between you and what you seek. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. Imagine standing beside a river in the Pacific Northwest, somewhere along the Columbia, where the water has been flowing for thousands of years. You watch as the current encounters a massive boulder in its path. What does the water do? It doesn't rear back and smash itself against the stone. It doesn't exhaust itself trying to move something immovable. The water simply flows around the obstacle, finding every crack, every opening, every path of least resistance. And in doing so, over time, that yielding water shapes the unyielding stone. The ancient Taoists observed this phenomenon and gave it a name that has echoed through centuries of wisdom traditions. Wu Wei, acting without forcing, moving without violence, achieving without struggle. Now you might be thinking this sounds like passivity, like giving up, like floating through life without purpose or direction. But that's not what Wu Wei means at all. Water flowing around a boulder isn't passive. It's profoundly active, constantly responsive, always moving. The difference is that it doesn't fight against reality. It doesn't waste energy resisting what is. Instead, it finds the natural path forward, the way that requires the least force and achieves the most elegant result. People who understand this principle don't do less than those who force their way through life. Often, they accomplish far more, but they do it with a quality of ease that looks almost magical to those still trapped in the paradigm of struggle. Have you ever tried to control your breathing during a moment of stress? You take a deep breath, telling yourself to calm down, and suddenly your breath becomes mechanical, artificial. The more you try to breathe naturally, the less natural it becomes. Your chest tightens. Your rhythm becomes forced and erratic. What was once automatic and perfect now requires constant management. This is what happens when you apply force to something that operates best through its own intelligence. Your breath knows how to breathe you. Your heart knows how to beat. Your body knows how to heal. And similarly, life itself has a current, a flow, a natural intelligence that knows where you need to go. But the moment you grab hold of it and try to steer it through sheer will, you disrupt the very grace you were seeking to preserve. I spent years of my life believing that everything good required maximum effort. If something came easily, I didn't trust it. If I wasn't exhausted at the end of the day, I felt I hadn't worked hard enough. Success meant breaking through walls. Love meant fighting for the relationship. Inner peace meant disciplining my mind into submission. And you know what all that forcing got me? Chronic tension in my shoulders. Relationships that felt like battles. A career that drained rather than energized me. And the persistent sense that no matter how hard I tried, I was somehow swimming against a current I couldn't see. Then one day, purely by accident, I stopped. Not because I had some profound realization. I stopped because I was too exhausted to continue. And in that exhausted surrender, something extraordinary happened. The things I had been chasing with such desperate intensity simply appeared. Not all at once, not in the exact form I had imagined, but they emerged naturally, like flowers blooming when you're not watching the buds. A relationship that had felt like constant negotiation suddenly became easy when I stopped trying to control its trajectory. A career opportunity I never could have forced into existence presented itself when I relaxed my grip on how things should unfold. The inner peace I had been trying to achieve through meditation and discipline and positive thinking just settled over me like snow when I finally admitted I had no idea how to manufacture it. This is the paradox that breaks most people's brains when they first encounter it. When we stop forcing and relax our grip on outcomes, we often discover that what we sought was already present beneath all our frantic activity. But how do you tell the difference between flowing and forcing? Because we need some practical way to distinguish between the two in the actual moments of our lives. Here's what I've discovered through careful observation of my own patterns and those of hundreds of people I've worked with over the years. Forcing has a particular feeling signature. There's strain in it, desperation, a sense that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. When you're forcing, your body holds tension even during moments of rest. Your jaw clenches. Your breathing becomes shallow. You feel like you're running on a treadmill that's always speeding up, and you can never quite catch your breath. Flowing, by contrast, has a completely different quality. There's effort, yes, but it's the kind of effort a bird uses to ride a thermal current. There's engagement without strain, movement without violence. You're working with the situation rather than against it. Think about sailing for a moment. When you're sailing with a favorable wind, you still have to adjust the sails, manage the rudder, read the water. It's not passive, but there's a playfulness to it, a dance between you and the elements. You're collaborating with forces larger than yourself, rather than trying to dominate them. Now, contrast that with rowing against a strong current. You can make progress through sheer determination and effort, yes, but every inch forward requires maximum force. You arrive at your destination exhausted and depleted rather than energized by the journey. Most of us have been taught to row against the current our entire lives. We've been conditioned to believe that the only honorable path involves maximum resistance and struggle. But what if there's a current that wants to carry you exactly where you need to go? Here's where this gets practical, where we move from philosophy into the actual texture of your daily life. Start noticing where you're unnecessarily forcing. In your relationships, are you constantly trying to change the other person, manage their emotions, control how they perceive you? That's forcing. In your career, are you pushing yourself into opportunities that require you to become someone you're not, that demand you constantly swim upstream against your natural inclinations and strengths? That's forcing. In your pursuit of happiness, are you white-knuckling your way through meditation practice, forcing gratitude when you feel genuinely sad, plastering on positivity when what you really need is to acknowledge something difficult? That's forcing. And you can recognize forcing by the physical sensation it creates in your body. There's always tension somewhere, tightness in the chest, clenching in the jaw, shallow breathing, a sense of holding yourself together through constant vigilance. Now, I'm not saying you should abandon all goals and drift aimlessly through existence. That's not what this is about. You can still have dreams. You can still work toward specific outcomes. You can still apply effort and discipline and focus. But here's the subtle distinction that makes all the difference. Hold your goals lightly. Work toward them with full engagement, but without desperate attachment. There's a way of pursuing what matters to you that feels like collaboration with life, rather than a battle against it. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you grip it too tightly, you'll crush it. If you open your hands completely, it will fly away. But there's a middle way where you hold it gently enough that it could fly away if it wanted to, but it chooses to stay. That's how you want to hold your dreams, your relationships, your plans for the future. Somewhere around the middle of this exploration, I want to invite you to do something with me. If this is resonating with you, if you're starting to recognize the places where you've been forcing your life into shapes it doesn't want to take, would you consider joining this community by subscribing? Not because I need your subscription to validate my worth as a creator, but because there's something powerful about consciously choosing to be part of a group of people who are asking these same questions, who are learning to flow instead of force. And I want to ask you something specific. After you finish watching this, take 60 seconds and sit in complete stillness. No phone, no distractions. Just notice where you're holding tension in your body right now. That's where you're forcing something. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to relax it away. Just acknowledge it with curiosity. That simple act of recognition is often the first step toward releasing the grip. The thing about not forcing is that it doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned or checked out from your own life. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of Wu Wei, of flowing rather than forcing. It's actually the opposite of passivity. It's a state of heightened awareness and responsiveness. When you're not locked into forcing your preconceived agenda onto every situation, you become available to what each moment is actually calling for. You become responsive rather than reactive. Reactive people operate from old programming. Something happens, and they automatically respond in the way they've always responded, regardless of whether it's appropriate to the actual situation. Forcing is almost always reactive in this sense. It's applying yesterday's solution to today's problem. It's imposing what you think should happen onto the organic reality of what is happening. Responsive people, on the other hand, meet each moment fresh. They read the situation as it actually is, rather than as they fear it might be or wish it would be. And from that place of clear seeing, they know what action is called for. Sometimes the responsive action is to do nothing at all, to simply be present with what is. Sometimes it's to act with great energy and speed, but there's no strain in it, because the action is arising from alignment with reality rather than resistance to it. I've watched this play out in countless scenarios. A responsive parent can feel when their child needs space versus when they need intervention. A responsive artist knows when to push through resistance and when to let the work rest. A responsive leader can sense when the organization needs structure and when it needs permission to be chaotic and creative. You carry within you a natural current, not the artificial current created by your conditioning, by the voices that told you who you should be and what you should want. I'm talking about something deeper, something that was there before anyone told you anything about yourself. Call it your essence, your true nature, your soul, if those words work for you. This natural current knows where it wants to flow. It knows what kinds of work would energize you rather than drain you. It knows what kinds of relationships would nourish you rather than deplete you. It knows how you need to express yourself creatively, how you need to contribute to the world, what would bring you that particular quality of aliveness that nothing else can provide. But here's what happens to most people. Over the course of growing up, they build a dam across that natural current. The dam is made of all the beliefs about who you're supposed to be, all the fear of what would happen if you trusted your own inclinations, all the ways you learned to force yourself into shapes that earned approval and avoided rejection. And behind that dam, tremendous pressure builds up. You feel it as chronic dissatisfaction, as the sense that something is wrong with you that needs to be fixed, as the exhausting effort it takes to maintain all the forcing you do every day. But here's what I've discovered, and what I want you to hear deeply. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to become someone different or better or more evolved. You need to remove the dam. You need to stop forcing yourself to be something you're not. And when you do, your natural current emerges, not all at once, usually. not in some dramatic flood, but gradually, like water finding its level, you begin to flow toward what actually serves you. This looks different for everyone because everyone's natural current is unique. For one person, it might mean finally leaving a career that looked good on paper but felt like slow death to their spirit. For another, it might mean stopping the forced positivity and actually grieving a loss they've been running from. For someone else, it might mean releasing the forced intensity in their relationships and discovering that real intimacy only becomes possible when you stop trying so hard to create it. The specifics don't matter as much as the underlying principle. When you stop forcing, space opens up, and in that space, your actual life can finally emerge. I want to be clear about something because this wisdom can be misused or misunderstood in ways that create harm. Not forcing doesn't mean tolerating abuse or staying in genuinely harmful situations out of some spiritual ideal of acceptance. It doesn't mean suppressing your boundaries or letting others walk all over you. Sometimes the most aligned, flowing action is to leave a situation that isn't serving you. Sometimes it's to speak truth, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's to protect yourself or others with whatever force is necessary. Wu Wei isn't about being weak or accommodating to the point of self-abandonment. It's about responding to what is with clarity and power rather than reacting from fear and contraction. You can flow and still be fierce. You can surrender to the moment and still set boundaries. The key is that your actions arise from presence rather than from the desperate need to control outcomes you can't ultimately control anyway. There are moments when you'll feel the difference so clearly it will take your breath away. You'll be in a conversation where you normally would have forced a particular outcome, managed someone's perception of you, strategically controlled the flow of information to get what you want. And instead, this time, you'll simply speak truthfully from what's alive in you in that moment. No agenda, no manipulation, just honest communication. And you'll feel the relaxation in your chest, the settling in your nervous system, the simple rightness of not forcing. Or you'll be working on a project where you normally would have pushed through with sheer will, ignoring your body's signals, overriding your intuition about whether this is actually the right direction. And instead, you'll pause. You'll listen to what wants to emerge, rather than imposing what you think should happen. And you'll discover a path forward that you never could have forced into existence through planning and control. This is what it means to live from flow rather than force. It's not passive, it's not lazy, it's not checking out or giving up. It's the most alive, engaged, responsive way of being in the world. It's trusting that you don't have to manufacture every good thing through desperate effort. It's recognizing that you are not separate from life, trying to control it from the outside. You are life itself, and when you stop interfering with your own current, you move with a grace and power that no amount of forcing can achieve. The cat is still chasing her tail in my neighborhood, but these days when I see her, I don't just see futility. I see the whole human condition reflected in those circles. We're all chasing something we already are. We're all forcing ourselves toward a peace that only arrives when we stop forcing. And maybe the only tail we ever needed to catch was the understanding that we were never actually separate from what we seek. So here's my invitation to you as we come to the end of our time together. If this conversation has stirred something in you, if you're beginning to see where you've been exhausting yourself through unnecessary force, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to this channel and become part of this ongoing exploration. But more than that, I want to hear from you. What's one area of your life where you recognize you've been forcing? Where have you been rowing against the current when you could have been sailing with the wind? Share your story in the comments, not for me, but for the person who needs to hear that they're not alone in this struggle. And tell me, what shifted for you while watching this? What became clear that wasn't clear before? Because this isn't just information to be consumed and forgotten. This is an invitation to actually live differently, to experiment with releasing your grip and discovering what flows naturally when you stop forcing. Welcome to the practice of Wu Wei. Welcome to the art of acting without forcing. Welcome home to your own natural current.